Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series DanMachi. And this was just an incredible episode because of the drama that was ramped up and the tension. And I mean, there are a lot of despicable things being revealed to us in this episode, a lot of hardships and such like that. We find that Aina is still siphoning information out of Loki about Soma Familia and how it's sort of the purest form of an alcoholic, product that creates an addiction within Soma Familia. This is what they, air quotes, worship, what is at the center of their familia. And they will ruin their own lives. They will ruin the lives of others, take advantage of others to gain wealth enough to continue their habit of wanting to consume whatever this addictive substance is and how destructive it is. And it kind of shows what the impetus behind the adventurers that are surrounding a character like Lili Ruka, whose backstory is really coming to the fore in this episode, to show us, just how bent backwards and dark and manipulative and hateful and disdainful they can be toward her. We're finding out that very early on in her life, her parents, just out of necessity, wanting to try to survive and make money, became adventurers, and shortly going into the dungeon, they lost their lives. So she has been on her own, fending for herself since childhood, since a very early age, and all she has been surrounded by, having entered, I guess, or been taken into Soma Familia, she is the point of abuse and, just they're beating her. She's having to fight by the skin of her teeth just to get any sort of wealth at all. On her own, she's tried to run away from these people, but they continually find her. At one point, it looked like she had a brand new life with this elderly man and woman who were going to probably be like parents to her, surrogate parents in any case, and they tracked her down and they ruined her life yet again. And it's just tragic to see that she has been living this abusive lifestyle so long that she could, basically cast the entirety of adventurers, anyone who chooses to be an adventurer, as a bad person. And so she kind of looks at the scenario as though she has to take advantage of them and get away from them, leaving them high and dry because they probably deserve it because of all these abuses. She's barely even being able to keep herself fed and everything like that. And people that she has, it's not only her own familia who are constantly following her and constantly on her footsteps, or rather coattails. It's also adventurers she has screwed over, as is the case of the guy who first runs into her in the caves. She's leading Bell into this scenario where she's totally gonna screw him. She wants to steal his blade. She's made these mock-up monster lures to put him in a predicament he can't escape from, and then she's gonna make off with the dagger that Hestia had, Hephaestus forge for him. And it's just, I was at the edge of my seat and almost getting angry watching her actually do this, because I feel for her character. At that point, with everything that you have thrown into the consideration of what she's been through and what she's doing, why she's doing it, I was like trying to almost plead to the screen, please, Lili Ruka, stop. You're trying to hurt the one person who knows and wants to help you. And it was very much a lesson learned in that, because of course she's met by that guy. She's met by her own, familia sort of compadres or whatever you want to call it. The people who have been treating her so awfully. And they bring out these killer ants and everything, and they're basically going to leave her high and dry, steal her wares that she's made off with from other adventurers, and they're going to use her as a decoy, and they don't care. They couldn't care less if she dies right then and there. And she's even to the point where she wants to still live. She wants to have a life. She's sorrowful for what she did to Belle, even in that moment before, it's sort of like the repercussions are befalling her. She thought she was going to be able to get out of this mess, and that's what motivated her. She was coming around to Belle's actually trying to be on her side, and so she has those fleeting thoughts in that, sort of final moments where you're not sure what's going to happen. I was hoping somebody would come save her. I didn't know if it was going to be Eyes. I didn't know if it was going to be Belle, what have you. But she's resigning herself to the fact, is this where I'm going to die? Maybe it's for the best. What more can I do? And then, of course, you hear Belle chanting, his call to magic, this new ability that he awoke in last episode, wiping out these ants effectively. And I did think the point where she's confronted with him again and she starts crying and screaming and wailing, I did feel like the wailing went on a little bit long. Just like they could have tapered that back a little bit, where she just gives into the circumstances, and she embraces him, sort of falling into him with the last of her energy. And I like the playing back and forth where we have Aina going to Hestia to try to question her and to warn her suspicions. This after Aina has had a run-in with Eyes going into the dungeon and expressing worry after hearing those adventurers who would later track down Lili Ruka and try to take advantage of her once again. She expressed her concerns and asked Eyes, could you help out in this moment? And then she goes to Hestia to basically say, try to convince him to get away from this girl, this supporter. She's only going to use him and bad things are going to come from it. I'm really worried, all this stuff. And we call back on the conversation between Hestia and Belle where, she's convinced that he's convinced. He's determined to not turn his back on Lili Ruka worth a damn, no matter what she does, no matter what she's done. True to heroic form. Even after she slighted him and left him high and dry, left him hanging, presumably, he could have been killed if he didn't try to escape, or in this case, didn't have a helping hand, whom he didn't know was from Eyes, who came to the rescue, because she's there at the end and she's finding his arm gauntlet that he lost and everything, basically confirming that. But just the character dynamics going on in this episode, in this series, it felt like it all built to this crescendo where it was truly testing the limits of the tolerance and the accepting, compassionate nature of Belle, as well as those elements that still exist in Lili Ruka herself, though she has been so scorned and so turned off because of all the hardships and the abuses she has suffered. And it was just a phenomenal episode in that it really got grating. And I was gritting my teeth. I was getting angry with Lili Ruka. I was getting angry at the people who were trying to use and abuse her. And then coming to the realization that she was only doing this because of these people. And finally, in the end, Belle coming in with his smile and not being like a sort of typical, heroic character as you might see in, sort of that trope where they come in and they're suave and they can do no wrong. I mean, Belle, he's not the smartest guy on the block, he's lived the hardships and he's trying his best and he's not always going to win, but he wants to be there for somebody if he can. And that speaks to more than the prowess he wields, more than the power he has accumulated, because he just wants to be there level with her. And say, we've lived a similar life. We can be friends. We can be family. We can take care of each other. And I got misty by the end with that in mind. Even though I felt like her screaming was going on a little bit long, as I say. Just that idea. He then talks to Aina and she's like, well, what are you going to do? And they meet back up. He and Lili Ruka. Their adventures will continue. They are going to be there for each other. Will this spell her finally, branching away from Soma Familia? Are her troubles done? Will we see more conflict in the future where more of her familia try to track her down and use and abuse her, and maybe Belle and other, potential characters like Eyes and such will be there to help her and save her and fend them off? remains to be seen, but whatever the case, the groundwork is laid with this episode for just the strongest potential bond between those two characters, as much, I would say, matched between, that bond that exists between Hestia and Belle as well. And the potential for one, if, it doesn't turn out that Lili Ruka starts to feel the way Hestia does and gets jealous over Eyes or something like that, I could see Eyes, sort of spinning off and becoming part of this group and everything like that. It's very much that RPG aesthetic of these characters coming together through trials and tribulations, shared ones, differing ones, that kind of thing. Just a brilliant stepping stone episode that I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people sort of reacted like, wow, this is really a downer after everything we've seen, and maybe taking it the wrong way, and being disappointed with the episode, whereas I feel like not enlightened, but this episode engaged very visceral emotions, and by the end, that affirmation of, there's been a success, but it's been a success not against monsters, not, proving your strength and how tough and badass you are. It's more a human quotient, an emotional quotient, and a connectivity, a person, between two people, basically, but a connectivity a person tries to bridge that gap with someone else they can relate to, they feel sympathy toward, and that other person, like many of us can be given a scenario like that. Sometimes we are all too proud and all too sort of stuck in our own disposition, and rarely, in the grand scheme of things, in the mass majority, do people ever want to try to change how they feel or what their beliefs are. And at the end, they were challenged. Belle, Hestia, Aina, Eyes, and especially Lili Ruka, they all had their preconceptions challenged. And we, the viewer, won with the outcome, just as much as those characters did. So, loved this episode. Love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this particular episode of DanMachi, or is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? I love this series. I love the characters. I like very much the way things are shaping up, and I just can't wait. I'm chomping at the bit now to see what the next step in the game is going to be. So, yeah, otherwise, that'll be it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.